Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to each and every one of you. We have been dealing with the failings of the ANC over the last few months, really. But just in last week, we've discussed how the ANC tabled a 10-point plan, which is basically the ANC going, hey, let's run it back just one more time. See if we can't increase the government, increase the tax burden, and somehow still make it work. The 10-point plan is a complete sham in and of itself. Now, during that video, a lot of you pointed out that I should have pointed to the ANC being bankrupt and insolvent, because how can an insolvent company seek to save the economy? I didn't cover that for a reason. I wanted the 10 points to stand on their own, and I wanted to show why the 10-point plan of the ANC is an abject failure, even if the ANC was an incredibly solvent and incredibly successful political movement. It should be mentioned, though, that across the world, from the Democratic Party to left-wing parties in Europe, the one thing that plagues almost all socialist and communist parties around the world is a consistent struggle with finances. They all seem to do fairly well in the beginning when there's a lot of funding coming in and a lot of organizations, because there are a lot of organizations with a lot of money throughout the world that desperately wants to bring on the communist revolution, that wants to have another crack at the failures of Lenin and Stalin and Mao and Idi Amin and Pol Pot and, a string of other really bad dictators that did some incredibly terrible stuff. Now, of course, there's a reason why very, very rich people like Bill Gates and George Soros wants to bring about a communist revolution, because it would allow them to make a lot of money. It should also be mentioned that the ANC isn't your bog standard communist party. The ANC is a lot more aligned with the World Economic Forum's version of communism, which they call state capitalism, which is why the World Economic Forum is very happy to side with China, because they do believe that that's the way the world economy should work. They call them stakeholder capitalists. This is where the state has a number of businesses that do most of the work for the state, and the state gets to control these businesses, but also kill all small businesses. So basically, everyone's working for the 11 or 12 large corporations in a country, and the state, those corporations work for the state. But, the money eventually dries up, because these parties or these individuals that are funding these movements eventually realize that there's a better alternative. There's another party that is probably, or is more aggressive in pushing it. That's why you see the ANC starting to struggle, but the EFF is still doing well, because a lot of the parties that used to fund the ANC have moved over and has started funding the EFF. Why? Because thanks to the book that's now been written about Julius Malema, we have seen how Julius Malema has managed to get the EFF into tender processes around the country. This means that all of those funders that are funding the EFF are making bank from tenders around the country. So the EFF is sort of becoming the new poster child for communism in South Africa. But okay, let's talk about the ANC and their insolvency, because even there, the ANC has become very, very scumbag. And so that then brings us to our story today. You'll see headlines like this one. The ANC is at risk of losing 1 billion rand in public funds, because that's roundabout what the fiscus pays the ANC. But it will also lose a lot of money from financial backers. We're going to get into why that happens exactly, but let's just quickly do a bit of a backstory here so you all understand what's happening. The company that is currently suing the ANC is a company by the name of Ezulweni Investments. Ezulweni Investments makes posters for election campaigns, and they do pretty much all of the posters for the ANC in these election campaigns, or at least some of them. Now, the ANC's election campaigns tend to run about 1 billion rand a pop. So the ANC spends a lot of money. The ANC owes Ezulweni Investments 85 million rand for posters and other materials that was delivered during I believe, the 2021 election cycle, or it may have been a little bit before that. Over the last week, the court and the sheriff of the court has sent heavily armed guards and police officers and bailiffs of the court to go and seize nearly 140,000 rands worth of items, desks, and computer monitors and all the rest of it from Luthuli House because they need to start repaying back those loans, or at least the money that is owed. The big problem, there's also 3 bank accounts that's been frozen now. There isn't 85 million rand in those 3 bank accounts. In fact, according to insiders inside the ANC, there is no money left. None whatsoever. Now, the ANC, for their part, has filed for a novation order. Basically, to make it as simple as possible, because nothing in law is ever actually simple, a novation order is simply you saying, hey, we can't pay it back on the previous agreement that we had. We need to come to a new agreement. The other problem, in 2023, the ANC demanded, or at least insisted, that Ezulweni never did the work, and that the work was never actually completed, and that Ezulweni actually bribed a party official to claim that the work has been done, but that, the ANC doesn't owe this money at all. Big issue here, because you can't claim, or you can't file for a novation order, but then also claim that you never actually did the work and therefore you don't owe any money. By filing for a novation order, you admit that you owe the money, but that you need a new payment structure. So the ANC clearly is very, very, very panicked at this point. And you'll understand in a second why they panic so much about what is coming. So just to give you a little bit of backstory here, this is what the ANC had to say. The ANC, through its legal representatives and forensic auditors, has formally notified the plaintiff about the novation of the court order. Taven Forensics has obtained a sworn affidavit from former ANC employer who admitted to being bribed to falsely claim that Ezulweni delivered banners and advertising materials. So they're saying this is false. But here you have the lawyer, Sarli, saying novation, the substitution of a new contract for an existing contract, is an arguable defense. However, the ANC is in an untenable position should it raise this in court. You can't raise novation and then say the contract was tainted by fraud. You can't have your cake and eat it. Because novation would be you admitting that the contract, I've already explained this to you, so, you don't have to worry. So why is this such a big issue for the ANC? When you declare insolvency, all of your finances are effectively seized. And insolvency always acts in favor of the liquidators, the people who you owe money to. All money that comes into your bank accounts will immediately go out to pay your creditors in order of whoever is owed the most amount of money. So in this case, if the ANC were to be forced to declare insolvency, the IEC, who pays every political party in this country a stipend, seems insane to call it a stipend because it's R1 billion, but every single political party receives campaign funding from the IEC that we as taxpayers have to pay for, of course. But that money couldn't go to the ANC. That money would have to be paid either to the debtors themselves, or the IEC would simply not be allowed to pay it, dependent on what the law of South Africa actually states. Any financiers or funders of the ANC would not be allowed to fund the ANC. They would have to pay back all of the debts. It should be mentioned that this is just one of the companies that the ANC owes money to. This does not include all of them, and there are likely to be a lot more. While, yes, 85 million is a lot of money, and definitely something that should concern you to some extent, you don't declare insolvency as a party that receives R1 billion a year from the IEC over 85 million rand. No. You declare that when you have far more debts than what you can ever hope to repay. The issue for the ANC is that it gets so much worse. As you'll see here, the ANC's finances are in dire straits, say insiders, and it is a constant balancing act to pay creditors and staff. Despite the best efforts of Treasurer General Gwen Ramakgopa, it's understood that other debtors first seek payment guarantees before carrying out work for the party. If this happens, it will be the latest in a long line of destructive forces for the ANC. The ANC has time and again been losing votes. Just last night, I was watching Biz News and their conversation with Sussman, who is basically a voter analyst, and he looks specifically at all of the by-elections in South Africa. And the ANC is losing support in every single province now, apart from Limpopo and Eastern Cape. In Mpumalanga, the ANC is starting to lose support, which is actually very, very concerning for the ANC, because it used to be Limpopo, Mpumalanga, and the Eastern Cape were unmovable. You could not win there. But now it's just the Eastern Cape and Limpopo left. Mpumalanga is starting to go another direction. While a lot of the support is walking over to MK, we also see upticks for the DA, the PA, and a number of other parties, even in Mpumalanga. So clearly the ANC is under a lot of pressure there. The ANC internationally is under even more pressure. They were, up until now, able to signal their virtue over the Gaza-Israel conflict. But since Donald Trump just established peace between Israel and Gaza, that is going away, and the ANC is going to lose a lot of support internationally if they continue to hound Israel after the peace negotiations begin, with even Hamas apparently now reaching out to the ANC saying, hey, could you guys stop? Because you're going to make peace very, very difficult. So the ANC there is starting to lose their global stance. The ANC has already lost its global stance with America, and there's at least been some movements in Europe that makes me think it's going to become very difficult for the ANC to continuously pull off their nonsense in our political system. But mostly, it's the fact that all of these things are now coming at the same time. Everything is now coming to a head. And of course, this is the nature of communism. This is the nature of corruption. Because the ANC doesn't just allow corruption at a state level, they allow corruption at a local level as well, inside the Tuli House with the ANC. Everything they do is aimed at buying support from very powerfully connected party officials. This means that once these party officials start to turn and the money starts to dry up, what do you do then? Well, your movement flounders and dies. And I believe that we are starting to see the beginning of the end of the ANC. They're already incredibly factionalized. The factions are already starting to chomp at the bit at who's going to be the next leader of the ANC. And there's no clear winner. So hopefully we'll see the death of the ANC before the turn of the next decade. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, if you like, dislike. It's free. You can do it. Leave a comment letting me know how much you will celebrate if the ANC finally does sing its swan song. And then massive shout out and thank you to all of the patrons as well as the YouTube channel members for continuously supporting this channel and allowing me to do what I do and hopefully do it even better in the future. Just hit the link in the description or the join button right below this video. As always, be good to each other, be kind to each other, and I will see all of you in the next one. Peace.